Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco here from Macabre Daily, and I'm joined today by writer and director Hanna Bergholm, whose new film Nightborn was about to hit Shudder on July 31st, which is this Friday if you're watching this week. Hannah's previous film Hatchling is one of the strangest and coolest films to come out in the past 5 years, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Hannah. So thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks. It's great to talk to you.
Oh, lovely. Well, my first question, albeit probably one you've answered ad nauseum at this point, is really to understand the inspiration behind Nightborn because it shares some similarities with Hatchling, but it's very much its own tale and focusing on a very different part of life. So curious to understand what was going through your and your co-writer's head when you all put this idea to paper.
Yeah, the whole idea of Nightborn really started from partly from my own experience as a mother, because when I got my child and the baby was screaming all the time, I felt so much all these emotions that I felt that are forbidden for a parent, kind of rage toward the child or confusion, and so I really want to make a film about these forbidden emotions, and also a film that tells about. In this case, it tells about a story about how to face a child and how to raise a child who is somehow different. So I got talked to a lot of parents that I knew, and I kind of collected this film from kind of many people's experiences.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, as someone who's not a parent themselves, but has many friends who are parents, one of the things that often isn't talked about, at least here in the US, is kind of the idea, or it's talked about in kind of secret, is like, postpartum depression and kind of with all the mommy bloggers and social media influencers today showing you kind of how to raise children. It sends all these mixed messages to parents about what good looks like rather than what's truly good is what you feel, right? And you kind of, your lived experience is far more impactful. So I'm curious, kind of, has your perception of kind of having a child in your life changed since the beginning of making this film to the end now that it's to its completion? Because your children's also grown up, right?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
time.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the process of this film really has taught me even more about how important it is to face your child and other people and yourself, as we really are, and not so much think about other people's expectations or norms um or some advices that you might get, that you get a lot how to raise your child and how. And also this film is not just about about for parents, it's also for for everybody who have ever felt themselves somehow different or find any kind of miscommunication with other people, because this film is also a lot about that.
Yeah, I mean, the mother character definitely stood out in terms of her being kind of this overbearing and almost cold presence in contrast, and the way that she almost tried to minimize what was happening because it's like, oh, well, that's how you were. You were a difficult baby, as if this is all kind of to be expected. And I'm sure that, I feel like there must have been part of you in Saga's character just kind of fielding all this feedback from people, whether you asked for it or not.
Yeah, yeah, sure it was. And also I kind of, like I said, I collected from many people's experiences, and the similar experience of kind of other people telling you how you should feel or what you should be like. So it's this film is also a lot about that.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has an opinion on how everyone else should be living their lives or
Yeah, yeah,
raising
sure.
their children.
Yeah.
So, um, and there's definitely some themes that carry over, I'd say, from Hatching into Nightborn. The idea that you have this kind of tenuous relationships with families, oftentimes one that's more dysfunctional in nature, and then the idea of holding secrets, particularly secrets that are more monstrous in a metaphorical sense. So I'm curious, kind of, do you see the same through line that I'm picking up on between these two films, or do you have a totally different take? Like, actually, I do not see these as connected at all
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Well, of course there are similar themes. I personally find it kind of this parent-child relationship very interesting. We all have parents ourselves, and it's it's because it's the first relationship that is in our lives, so it's very kind of interesting to dig into that world. And in this film Nightborn, yeah, I feel that all the characters in this film, all the family members, they all mean well, and and in a way, when everybody speaks, they are right in what they
Right.
say, but they just end up misunderstanding each other. And I've always find kind of interesting of telling stories about how people, even though they mean well, how they might get kind of disconnected and misunderstanding each other.
Oh my God, yes. There's so much horror in comedy and just miscommunication that
Yeah,
happens between
yeah,
people wanting to do the right thing, but the intention being different than the impact that's made when
yeah,
they say
exactly.
it. And obviously, being based here in the US, we have different just our healthcare system is different. Kind of there's different challenges that women face when they're pregnant with children. I'm curious, kind of what curious to understand more about the kind of how this compares to things in Finland, because obviously you have more socialized medicine in the Scandinavian countries. There's a lot more, it seems to be importance placed on um, how we take care of parents. So, for those in North America, like how do you kind of reconcile between this very different experience that we have here versus kind of the one that we can have in Europe and particularly in this case, Finland?
Yeah, in Finland overall, I would say we have very good healthcare system. It's kind of technically free. It costs a little bit, but
Right.
basically, everybody can afford it. And we have this kind of child healthcare system that is free for everybody. That when you're pregnant and after, when child is small, everybody's kind of there, kind of meetings that goes on with the family, and the baby's health is being checked and so on. But even with that kind of good system, there is a hole I've noticed, and I've talked with many parents, women, and also men about this. That especially, for example, what happens physically to women after childbirth is kind of something that's not really talked about, because it seems
Yeah.
like even in Finland, our healthcare system is really kind of designed originally by men, and it's so it's very women's bodies are something that is kind of okay. It's thought that you give birth and then just deal with it, kind of move on.
Right.
And but it might happen. It varies on person, but it might happen that something very dramatic happens in female body, and your body might get broken, and then you're just supposed to kind of deal with that and be okay with it. And so I really want this story is also about how this baby kind of breaks Saga, the main character, and how she then has to deal with this. And also about for men, because many men told that in this healthcare system, it's all about the baby and the mother, and they are kind of forgotten, and their feelings are forgotten. So it's, uh, yeah, I really want to tell about that as well.
Yeah, it's John is such an interesting character in the film because he's really trying to do his best.
Yeah.
And it's not, I love that you could have made him kind of the bad guy in a way, but instead you just kind of, you treat him like a person in the sense that he reacts the way I think most people,
Yeah.
regardless of gender, would act. If your partner's going through something this profound, you want to be supportive, but you also want to try and understand and help reconcile some of the more strange things that are going on. So, and in many ways, like the dynamic between Saga and John is, the way in which Saga has a difficulty dealing with her post-pregnancy body, how she doesn't feel as attractive as she used to, and how John tries to show that to her. There's so much intimacy and kind of depth into those characters. And how did you help to formulate the character of John through that? Because it feels like, again, this none of these perspectives feel kind of uniquely gendered in a way where like, oh, I can tell a woman or a male wrote this.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things you wanted to do to ensure that John's character kind of came through the way that you intended, and that it was authentic, but also not making him a hero or a villain unnecessarily?
Yeah, it was very important, with John, like with all the characters, to make them very human and kind of layered characters, so that they are not good or bad. And I think he's uh, kind of a person who, he moved to Finland, he can't understand the language, and
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of discussion is kind of, someone are talking in Finnish and it's not translated to him, so he kind of gets lost in translation somewhat. And since Saga, his wife, is kind of having a hard time and reacting in a way that she's just, kind of shuts inside
Yeah.
herself. And John really tries every kind of possible way trying to help but it kind of always kind of for Saga's point of view, it always looks like the wrong way. So it's again this kind of unfortunate miscommunication that happens.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a definite humor in the film that I think is, it's subtle in a way where if you're really not paying attention to it, you might miss it, but it's also there when you're, for those that are kind of keeping a close eye. I'm wondering kind of how did you find that balance? Because it can be really difficult, especially when you're writing about more sensitive topics, to infuse some humor, but there's parts in this that are objectively funny, even when the baby is kind of like being warded off by Saga and she's kind of having a standoff between her and the baby in the playroom. Like that's funny, but I'm curious kind of, how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, well, first of all, I always feel that in real life as well, when we are all facing difficult situations and we're just trying to cope, we end up acting in very comical way. And I always
Yeah.
think that kind of miscommunication between people is very kind of funny, but it's also kind of sad in the same time. So in this film, it's made so that if you want to watch it without seeing any humor, it's fine, and if you want to see humor in it, it's kind of written there as well. So it depends in kind of in what kind of mood you are, so you can see it in different ways.
No, I definitely picked up on the humor side. And maybe it's perhaps, I think if I was a parent, maybe I'd have a different reaction because I'd be paying attention to kind of more of the ways in which the John and Saga interact and kind of more to that extent. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the house and the location. I mean, so much of the film is about this really interesting location and house that Saga's returning back to, and this beautiful lush forest, which feels almost fairy tale like. So could you tell me a little bit more about like the locations you used to shoot this and where were these actual houses, actual house you found, or were these sets that you had to build in? Because it looks just amazing.
Yes, it we actually shot the film in Lithuania, and it took a long time finding forests that I believe look Finnish and look like ancient old forests. But we found very cool locations, and the house was actually a facade that we designed and built, and the interior was a studio because also I wanted to create kind of unique style for this film so that people don't start thinking about some particular era or style when they're looking at the house. So yeah, it was really made for this film, and I really, with this house, I think the house kind of portrays Saga's and John's relationship. Kind of, it's very the house that you might feel that is it possible to renovate this house,
Right.
but they renovate it very quickly in a way that they just put kind of wall to wall carpets covering the maybe a little bit rotten floors and kind of patching it up, making it look nice, and yeah, and then things start to happen.
That's such a fascinating. I didn't pick up on that, but it makes complete sense that the house represents kind of them and their relationship because you're right, it has these kind of, there's something underneath the surface which you could look at as their relationship having this kind of unspoken about tension, and that's never really brought to light, and eventually it has to come to light in metaphorically through their emotions, but also literally through the tree branches coming out of the ground. So I love that. I'm so glad that you shared that. And my other question has to do with kind of the relationship you have with, and I hope I'm pronouncing the last name right, but Ilya Routzi.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Because you worked with them on Hatching as well as this film. So curious a little bit more about kind of your kind of working collaboration with each other and how you two partner when it comes to scripts and stories like these.
Yes, we actually figured out in Hatching when we started to write that story together that we work very well together. We have similar kind of we have similar visual imagination and similar sense of humor and some kind of similar values in life. So we work very well. And in this Nightborn, had the kind of the base of the story kind of in my mind, and then we really started to write it together in a sense that we build on each other's ideas. The other one kind of gets some idea, and the other one is like, okay, that's cool, but what if it would be like this? And so it's very kind of very cool kind of co-work.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like a great collaboration as far as
Yeah.
what we get on the screen. And having spoken with so many filmmakers, there's definitely this tendency to like when you find people that kind of get you to want to keep working with them.
Yes.
So I hope that you and Ilya continue to work together because the collaborations are wonderful from where I sit.
Yeah.
And my last question for you, Hannah, is a bit of a fun one. But if you were asked to program a double feature with Nightborn, what do you think would make a really fun, interesting, or even terrifying companion to put alongside of it?
Oh, that is that is a tricky one. Oh, um, yes.
I know I put you on the spot.
Well, I'm just thinking there's some old one or some new one, which one, where to go. Uh, yeah, but maybe Brood from
Oh, yes.
Cronenberg.
Oh my God. I love The Brood. I think
Yeah,
I know people say Videodrome is Cronenberg's best, or at least
yeah,
many people attribute that, but I think for me, The Brood is my personal favorite.
yeah,
And that would be a wonderful companion piece because you
yeah,
have the literal monster kids with the we're not really sure, just a regular kid, maybe, probably. We'll see. You have to
yeah,
watch Nightborn to find out.
yeah.
So Hannah, this has been such a lovely discussion. I really appreciate you making the time for it, and I want to remind everybody that's watching that Nightborn will be available to stream on Shudder on July 31st. So please watch it, give it all your support. Hannah, I know you've just been showing this at Fantasia Festival as well, so hope all the folks enjoyed it that got to see it there. And cannot wait for whatever you're working on next. I know, we're always in this world of busy, busy, go, 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 but take your time, enjoy the victory of this film, and then I'm looking forward to whatever you put together next.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you. Great.
Thank you, Hannah. All
Thanks,
right.
Matt.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Hannah. Enjoy the rest of the interviews and hope you
Thank
have a
you
great
so
rest of your
much.
day.